What's up and welcome to a very MSM Christmas. Well, it's that time of year. The weather is getting colder, the days are getting shorter. It's already snowed once. Lights are going up all over everywhere. It's Christmas time. Actually, it's Advent, from the Latin adventus, which means arrival. Okay, fine, it's Advent time. Well, during Advent, we celebrate the arrival of Jesus at Christmas, and we also anticipate the time that he's going to come again, his second arrival, when he comes back. Advent is a time of celebration and a time of anticipation. And during this season, we have 4 words that we use that help us to get ready to celebrate and also to anticipate this arrival. And those words are hope, peace, joy, and love. And over the next 4 weeks, we're gonna take time to look at each one of these words. And today, we're talking about hope. And there's nobody better to learn about hope from than my friend Abraham. So we're gonna talk about the story of Abe today. You can find his story in the Bible in the book of Genesis. And as we get into the story of Abraham today, there's 2 things that we have to know about him before we get going. Number 1, Abraham was from a place called which is a really silly sounding name, but Abraham lived in the land called and that's where Abraham had always lived. That's where all of his family was, that's where his friends were, that's where his job was. Was all that Abraham had ever known. So we need to know that Abraham was from and we also need to know that our friend Abe was really old. At the time that our story begins, Abraham was already 75 years old, which is like so old. No offense if you're 75. My apologies. But Abraham was from and Abraham was old, and those 2 things are gonna come into play as we get into our story. So one day, Abraham's in he's going about his normal business, doing his job, just living life like he normally does, when all of a sudden, God shows up. And not like how sometimes we talk about, God really showed up and he provided a way, or God did something cool. No. God literally appears to Abraham, which is nuts. And Abraham freaks out, obviously. He's like, what is happening? But God came to Abraham with a really specific message. He said, Abraham, I want you to do something. I want you to leave Leave everything you've ever known, all your friends, all your family, your job, leave it all behind. I want you to go to the place that I'm gonna show you. I'm not gonna tell you where it is. I just want you to trust me. And if you do this, Abraham, here's what I'll do. I'll give you land. I'll give you a whole country to be your own. I'll give you so many descendants that you become a great and powerful nation. And last but certainly not least, I will bless the entire world through you. Man, that's an incredible promise. I'll give you your own nation. You'll have so many descendants. You'll become a powerful country. You'll bless the whole world. And of course, Abraham was like, this sounds amazing. But it also sounded a little bit far-fetched because there was this little tiny problem. And that problem was that Abraham and his wife, Sarah, they were already 75 and 66 years old, and they didn't have any kids. They were really, really old, and they had no children. And I don't know how many 66 and 75-year-olds you know walking around with a stroller because they just had a newborn baby. But for me, I know of absolutely 0. And so this promise from God, it seemed incredible, but it also seemed incredibly far-fetched. But Abraham, he had hope. He chose to believe that God would do what God had promised him. And so Abraham and his wife Sarah, even though they were so old and even though they had only ever lived in they packed up their bags and they left to see what God would do. Now, fast forward with me about 24 years after Abraham and Sarah left The last 24 years, they've been really profitable. Abraham and Sarah, they've gotten very wealthy. They've made some really powerful friends. They've gotten some land. They have quite a bit of property and herds and flocks. These guys are doing pretty well. But there's one little problem. Well, honestly, it's becoming a pretty big problem at this point. They still don't have a kid. See, God had promised Abraham and Sarah they would have a son. They would have descendants. They would become this mighty, powerful, incredible nation. But now Abraham is 99 years old and Sarah is just behind him at 90, and they still haven't had a baby. And I would have to think that this hope that seems so tiny, so crazy, so minuscule at this point just seems impossible. But all of a sudden, 24 years after God shows up to Abraham and makes him a promise, God shows up again. And God comes to Abraham and he says, Abraham, you've done what I said, and I want to tell you something. I'm about to give you descendants. I'm about to give you land. I'm about to make you into a mighty nation. You're going to have the entire world be blessed through you. And of course, at this point, Abraham, well, he just laughs. And not like, like Abraham's just like, God hears this from God and is like, right, because God, I'm 99 years old. You're going to give me a kid now? Abraham just starts cackling. But God's like, no, I'm serious. In fact, this very year, I'm going to give you a son, and you're going to name him Isaac. And I'm going to work through Isaac to make you into a mighty nation. You're going to bless the entire world. And in this moment, God gives Abraham a promise that defies all reality. God gives Abraham a promise that defies all expectation. This is an impossible promise. And faced with this impossible promise, Abraham, well, he has two decisions he could make. Abraham could choose to doubt. He could choose to think that all of the things that are going on, well, there's just too much against this. This promise is impossible. I'm 99, Sarah's 90, there's no way. Or Abraham could choose to hope. He could choose to believe that what God had promised him wasn't impossible after all, because it was God himself who made the promise. And Abraham chose to hope. Now, hope is a funny thing. It's a word that we use to describe something that we would like to have happen, but that we're not necessarily sure is going to happen. Hope is something that we would desire, but that's not guaranteed. For instance, I hope that we win our next basketball game. I hope that I get a puppy for Christmas. I hope that this Christmas it snows and it's not 75 degrees. Hope has to do with something that is possible, but that isn't guaranteed. Which means that hope is a word that is always going to be surrounded by uncertainty. The thing about hope is that hope can be really exciting, but hope can also be extremely disappointing because hope isn't certain. The way we usually talk about hope leads us to a place where we have to warn people, don't get your hopes up. Because getting your hopes up can lead to you being extremely let down. And that's because hope, as most people talk about it, is rooted in something uncertain. It's rooted in something that may not happen. But that's not the kind of hope that we're talking about when we talk about Abraham's hope. Because Abraham's hope, biblical hope, it's not rooted in something that is uncertain. Instead, it's rooted in something that is certain. His hope wasn't some kind of wishful thinking. It wasn't an idea that would be nice. It wasn't something that might happen. Abraham's hope was rooted in something he was certain would happen. Because Abraham's hope was rooted in God and the promises of God. As Abraham looked back on his life and he saw all of the ways that God had already kept his promises, when he looked back and he saw all the ways that God had been faithful to do what he had said, Abraham heard this promise that seemed impossible, and he had a confident hope that God would do what he said he would do, because Abraham rooted his hope in God. You see, a hope like that, that's a powerful hope. Usually when we talk about hope, we talk about something that seems so fragile. Just the slightest little thing might take our hope away. But hope like Abraham's, hope that is the hope we see in the Bible, that is rooted in God and his promises, that is not a fragile hope. That hope is powerful. And powerful hope is kind of like a match. Well, it just got pretty dark in here. The darkness like this, it can feel really overwhelming. It can feel really powerful. It seems like there's nothing that we can do about it. But even in a room this dark, when you strike a match, that match gives off light. And so even in a dark room, this match, well, it's powerful. Because no matter how dark the room gets, this light still burns bright. See, a room can't be so dark that this light suddenly goes out. The darkness doesn't have any effect on this light at all. This light is powerful. It drives the darkness away. And no matter what's going on around it, it still continues to burn bright. Hope that is rooted in something that is certain, well, it's a lot like this match. No matter what goes on around it, no matter how dark things seem to be, no matter how doubtful the outcome may seem, hope that is rooted in God, hope that is rooted in something certain, that hope is powerful. And Abraham chose to have hope. Against all hope, Abraham in hope believed and so became the father of many nations. Just as it had been said to him, so shall your offspring be. Without weakening in his faith, he faced the fact that his body was as good as dead since he was almost 100 years old and that Sarah's womb was also dead. Yet he did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God, being fully persuaded that God had the power to do what he had promised. Abraham's hope was rooted in certainty, fully persuaded that God had the power to do what he had promised. And so Abraham chose to hope. And later that year, Isaac, this promised child, this impossible promise, a child of hope, was born. Abraham and Sarah, at the age of 100 and of 91, finally had their promised child. And Isaac, he would grow up and he would have a son, and his son would have a son. And all of a sudden, Abraham's family became a powerful, mighty nation. The promise that God had made was fulfilled. Now you may be wondering, that's awesome. I love that story. That's so cool. Abraham had hope. What does that have to do with me? And what does this have to do with Christmas? Well, that's a great question. This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nashon, Nashon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David, David was the father of Solomon. Matan, the father of Jacob, Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah. Thousands and thousands of years before Jesus was born, Isaac, this promised impossible child in the midst of hope, was born. And thousands of years later, his great some odd grandson, Jesus, came into the world. And Jesus, of course, was also a child of hope. How do we want to transition this part? Jesus was also a child of hope. All right, Isaac was proof. Jesus gives us reason to hope. And Jesus was also a child of hope. You see, Isaac is living proof that putting your hope in God, no matter how far-fetched, no matter how impossible it may seem to be, Isaac is proof that that hope is never wasted. And Jesus is the reason that we can have hope. So Advent is a time that we celebrate the arrival of Jesus, this baby that was born in hope, this promised child whose coming seemed impossible, but yet in hope was born. We celebrate his arrival. But Advent's not just celebrating an arrival. Advent is also anticipating an arrival. You see, when Jesus came, Jesus brought us hope. When God stepped into our world in the form of a baby, he gave us hope that we could have a relationship with him again. He gave us hope that we could have our sins forgiven. And the coming of Jesus, this promised arrival, gives us hope that one day he will return to make all things right. Friends, I don't know about you, but as I look around during this Advent season, I see a whole lot of things that aren't right. I see so many things that are wrong, so much brokenness, so much pain, so much hurting, so much suffering. This Christmas, more than any other, it seems that our loneliness is being highlighted. It seems that all of the problems in our lives are just being exacerbated. In the world that we live in right now, it feels pretty dark. It feels pretty hopeless. But remember, hope is like a match. And yet our world today may be dark, but the thing is, when the world is at its darkest, matches have the potential to shine the brightest. And today, in the midst of this darkness, we can choose to have hope. And even though the world may seem hopeless, our hope will shine bright.